Welcome to PQ or Professional Quotient. I'm your host, Jason Winningham, and today we have a very special guest, Andrea Kilburn. Good day, Andrea. Would you like to introduce yourself to us?
Hi, Jason. Yes, thank you for having me. I am an HR EEO Affirmative Action Compliance Manager for EssilorLuxottica. We are the company that owns brands like Oakley, Lens Crafters, Pearl Vision, Target Optical, and many more. And I've been here for almost 2 years now.
Awesome. And can I ask you, in the EEO field, what does your typical day look like?
Well, it's changing on a daily basis. So
Hmm.
my particular field deals a lot with federally required reports,
Mm-hmm.
state required reports, with a very narrow scope on employee demographics, meaning race, gender, veteran status, disability status. Most other analysts in the company can provide some level of that information. But when you're working with government agencies, because our company is a federal contractor,
Mm-hmm.
we do have to provide, or have traditionally had to provide in the past, very detailed reports that can be audited.
Mm.
And they are looking actively for discrimination. And we're not talking, manager stories kind of discrimination. We're talking about this group of 10 managers in Dallas seems to have selected, one group more than the other by
Mm.
some statistically significant
Mm-hmm.
means. Prove that you're not discriminating, kind of thing.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So aside from that, there's also just problem solving, constant problem solving. Um, since all the different systems that track this information really give you just information. They don't tell a story. I have to figure out the story on the back end. And when it makes absolutely no sense, I have to start talking to people and figure out what's the process that caused this? What is the why behind why
Mm-hmm.
there's so few applicants, or there's, so many hires of this particular group, more so than expected for the area, that sort of thing. My role has definitely shifted, but is still problem solving. The new administration has made a lot of changes fast and loose, and I'm on constant webinars from a whole host of reputable legal sources, just listening in on what they're interpreting the next steps are going to be, what kind of risks are coming, what the focus is, whether it's, race and gender, disability, veteran status, and also there's a diversity piece to what I do,
Mm-hmm.
because we have to undertake what's called good faith efforts
Mm-hmm.
to attract and retain veterans, people with disabilities, and previously females and minorities.
Mm-hmm.
So
Not
we're
anymore.
putting more of a focus. Yeah.
Okay.
So the federal affirmative action requirements are gone. There's still a lot of states that have their own requirements.
Mm.
And it's tricky because a lot of states that we've contracted with usually had a provision in the contracts that says something like, oh, if you have a federal affirmative action program, you're fine, or just give us that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but we can't rely on that anymore.
Mm.
So now we'll have to do them one at a time instead of one large piece of data that you clean and get out one set of reports that's thousands of pages,
Mm-hmm.
but used for several different things.
So you have to continually keep yourself up to date on basically rules that are continually in flux. Am I saying
Yes.
that right? Okay.
Yes, no, that's
And
correct. And I do have a counterpart here that
mhm,
deals more with the state specific, not the reporting pieces, but the state specific pay transparency requirements. Or, California has lactation requirements, and you have to have rooms that are a certain size, and they have to have a fridge, and certain notices that have to go out in New York because, we have certain kinds of employees, and all of those state kinds of things.
mhm.
Um, we, myself and her, have to put out policies and FAQs and things like that, and also do special projects.
And is this a field that you always knew you'd be into, or how did you come to be in EEO compliance and in this?
It's more HR compliance, I think,
Okay.
and
HR.
it's kind of diversity adjacent as well.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of just fell into the field. I
Really?
was
Okay.
I was I was a mortgage a loan underwriter at a mortgage company.
That's a big
And
switch then.
yeah, and then they put me in I was such a problem solver. They put me in the post-closing section where underwriters that didn't do their jobs right, the loan couldn't be sold because most mortgage companies sell their loans. Couldn't be sold because it didn't meet some requirement for who we intended to sell it to, and I would have to find another home for it. So literally trying to find another company that will take this promissory note language or, that sort of thing. Because I was good, at learning Excel and doing the problem solving, a friend that moved into the space said, "Hey, you need to come over here." And I started an affirmative action.
And so when you started, did you need any special credentials or a certain kind of degree to move into that field? Or was it just because you had somebody in that network that invited you, so to speak, that you had your foot in the door?
Yeah, I had somebody in my network that gave me a foot in the door.
Nice, nice. And so if someone were wanting to go into the same field, are there things that you would kind of recommend that they follow, read up on, stay apprised of? If somebody's just looking at Andrea and saying, I want to do what Andrea does.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have a degree. I was working on my 4-year degree when I started. I since have received 2 masters, one in HR and one in industrial organizational psychology. But I think to really get your foot in the door, I'm kind of a strange story. What I see most HR professionals doing is starting as recruiters and then becoming HR professionals.
Interesting.
But I would be a terrible recruiter. So I think really just taking, HR in college, going that track with heavy data analysis,
Mm,
would be an easy way to get in
awesome. Sure.
because there
And
is a lot of data analysis.
well, and I imagine, I mean, data is something it's not going away. I mean, if anything, we're going more and more into data and we have more and more ways in which to look at it and digest it. So, I mean, that's certainly a field that would be advantageous
Well,
for
and
sure.
not just creating, the report or doing what someone asks, but asking what the underlying problem is. What I usually find is there's a huge gap between those that went the technical route and, know everything about the HR systems, SAP, and can write in SQL and Tableau and, all that stuff. But they never ask the underlying question, which is what does the people need for this? Maybe there is a better route. I worked at a company where I started and they said, "Oh, we had an old applicant tracking system. Let's get you trained up on what we've done to have access to those records, the old records that we need access to." We told our IT folks that we need all the application documents, and they've been working on it for a year, and it's live, so we can use it. I looked at it and immediately knew there was an issue because they could not pull up a single actual application.
Oh,
They could
no.
pull up resumes,
Hmm.
and they just said, "Oh, it's just because there was only a sample in there that the full load would be coming." But
Hmm.
they still couldn't show me one single application. And, day one, I'm having a call with just the legal team where I worked and the person that was heading that. And then day 2, they added one more level of programmer. Day 3, they added one more level of programmer. Day 4, they added the outside consultant. Day 5, they added the Indian counterpart in India
Hmm.
um, to the call. And what I suspected was true the IT definition of a document is .doc, .xls, .pdf. The legal department's definition of a document is the application you filled out. But when you fill something out online, it doesn't make a PDF. It goes into data.
Sure.
Data
Yeah.
you have to match to what a form would look like for an application, like what a recruiter sees when they pull up your application in a system.
Mm-hmm.
That was not programmed. So they created an applicant retrieval system that could not pull applications. One word,
Yeah.
document, the definition of a document. No one asked other questions. I've
Yeah.
had the same issue come up at even larger companies where there was a real disconnect between what different groups thought the definition of applicant was.
What?
And this
Oh,
is outside counsel in the room,
okay.
inside counsel in the room,
Mm.
other people wasted 4 hours until I asked that seemingly stupid question. What do you consider an applicant? What do you consider an applicant? And it was not the same thing. And then we
And
finally were able to
that's when
get
we
somewhere.
find out we're operating from two different terminologies of the same word.
Yes.
That's challenging. But it's good on you to be able to recognize that there was a disconnect there. That's
It's funny. Yeah. And that's what I see in HR technology, that the folks that go the technology route are a little deaf to the people part of the HR. And the HR folks that are HR VPs or HR recruiters, they're not as technical. So there's kind of this gap when they're speaking to each other.
mm.
And that's where I fill in, because I can do
Hmm.
both.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. It gives us a little bit of a picture of what your world is like from that day-to-day perspective. On this show, we really focus on the aspects that build up and raise our PQ, our professional quotient. And this is through it's how we utilize our personal portfolio of professional equity. So those would be our skills, our knowledge, our experiences, our education, and our network. Out of those things, what would you say is the most valuable to you right now?
You know, I'm not a big social media person.
Mm-hmm.
My Insta, my Facebook, those are all pictures of my dog, and I put in no information and really only look at stuff. But I have kept my LinkedIn pretty robust. And I actually don't even keep a resume. I just keep the LinkedIn updated because it makes you a resume. Yeah. But one thing that I really value is kind of that insight of what HR sees when they're doing, resume reviews and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
It is just, I'm starting a doctoral program now in IO psychology. And these studies are just fascinating. Recruiters can actually tell if a resume was written by a female versus a male because
Based
of
off
the
of
language that's
the
used.
language. Hmm.
Females, and it's studies that are out there, females use more language saying things like, collaborated, worked on a team, and males tend to say led or created, things like that. I literally told someone, a friend on LinkedIn that's been laid off, find someone who's been hired in the last 5 years for a job you want and circle all the verbs on their LinkedIn resume, because the packaging matters. You can have the most delicious cake in the world. If it's in a brown bag, it can taste better than a Twinkie, but the Twinkie looks more visually appealing.
That is so
It could have
true.
more quality ingredients. It could be the best hole in the wall place, but
Mm-hmm.
if it doesn't have that marketing, and I think sometimes if your position isn't inherently something to do with selling, it's hard for you to sell. But in whatever position you're in, I have always found that you have to sell. You have to sell the project. You have to sell the idea. The more professional you make it, even if you don't need a PowerPoint to sell something to your boss that you want to work on, it looks more professional and put together if you do it. You're
Sure.
already that much closer to
Hmm.
getting that than if you just had a conversation.
Taking those little extra steps to create a PowerPoint, something like that before you share an idea, I think it really sends the message that this isn't, you're not just spitballing an idea here. You've thought through aspects of it. And even if you haven't thought through all of it, just having a presentation alone presents that, oh, they must know what they're talking about. They've spent time to do this. So it does give a little bit of a credence, whether it's deserved or not, but it's there. I like this idea that within the resume, this exercise of asking someone who's gotten a role to see their resume and look for the verbs. I've not heard that before. I really like that. And it also leads me to wonder, in this day and age, almost everybody is putting whatever text they want to use for anything, whether it's a Word document or a resume or whatnot, into AI and saying, help me. I'm curious how that might shape some of these, especially the historically more female to male type language that's found in there. Like if that will go away into just, oh, we know it's AI because it has the long dash every other sentence, or because, the one I always pick up on is the word ripple. Anytime you see ripple, I'm like, AI made that one, because AI is constantly throwing ripple into anything I'm asking it for. And I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
tired of that word. So there's certain
I,
buzzwords,
you
but yeah.
know, I have used ChatGPT. I actually subscribed to it because I use it so much more now that I had a professor give me this advice because I asked her, I know a lot of people use it and maybe they don't want to say if they used it because they don't know if how they used it was wrong. And I just asked her, I want to use ChatGPT. Is it okay if I use it to search? And this is in a master's program for IO Psych. Is it okay to use it to search for sources? Given that I intend to fully read them or at least have AI summarize them for me, not just rely that it's real because it'll give you fake stuff. And she said this, you do not have to cite ChatGPT for doing something you would not normally cite if a person gave it to you. So think of what a tutor helps you do. A tutor helps you reword things. They help you figure stuff out in your paper, make it look more professional. You wouldn't cite Google for summarizing or reading to you an article. So with that kind of mentality, now I just think, oh, if there was a Jennifer next to me and I asked her this, I'm not going to cite Jennifer. So I feel more confident using it.
Sure, sure.
And I'm sorry, I forgot your question at this point.
It's fine, because this is a topic that I think is so important, is using it as a tool. And
Yes.
for myself,
Ethically.
being neurodivergent, I love the idea of having tools that can assist, especially with basically executive functioning. So one of the things I like to do is I create different agents or GPTs, depending on if it's Chat GPT or like Copilot, with everything I know about my projects and my steps, so that when I'm in the moment and my brain literally is like, I don't remember what the next thing is, I can literally say, I've done this. What's my next step? Oh, good. And okay. And then it just spits me back out and I can start going in a direction again. So I'm finding it to be super helpful in that sense. And then in the writing aspect, yes, it helps with the reorganization of, a lot of times I'll spit out, I keep saying the word spit. I will say like all these concepts, and then I'll tangent over to here, and then I'll tangent back over to here, and then I'll finish. And then it will say, it would be better if, and it just kind of rearranges things I've thought. And I'm like, oh, brilliant. That's much easier. And then usually I'm also an over communicator, where I will, it's not a difficult question to ask. Hey, Andrea, do you want to, would you like to film a podcast with me? But I might have it in like 6 paragraphs. And so I might put it into the GPT and then it can come up with like 2 sentences. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's perfect. Just what I wanted to say.
Yeah, no, and it's funny because the way I think of ChatGPT or any of them is you have to give it instructions as if it's a toddler that knows almost everything.
Yes.
And how would you talk to a toddler? Okay, I want you to take this paper that I've written and I want you to reformat it without changing any of the language into bite-sized paragraphs with headings. And that's exactly what it'll do. The issue is that I think most people think of what they want, but when they communicate it into the GPT, just like when they communicate to people, it's
Mhm.
not detailed enough.
Yes. Yes.
So I have said, no, you're changing my sentences. Use my exact wording because I feel a little unethical when it helps me too much. Use my exact wording, reformat, make no substantial changes, uh, or make recommendation for any word change other than reformatting, just so I can see what it's doing.
Sure. Absolutely.
And another really good thing for the PowerPoints is
Mhm.
use it to make a PowerPoint. If you've written something, I also suffered from putting too much on a slide. I think a lot of people do. They want to
Mhm.
have it there, they want to rely on it. I'm a
Mhm.
big fan of appendices.
Sure. Me too.
Start your PowerPoint, the entire thing, as if it was an appendix.
Mhm.
Just put whatever you want on there. Put it in a chat GPT, assuming there's no proprietary information that will get you in trouble,
Of course.
and
Good
say,
call.
make this into more bite-sized slides. Summarize
Mhm.
this.
Mhm.
That way you still have backup if you get a question um, in the back of it. You don't have to go through it, but people can print it out if they'd like.
Mhm. That makes sense. I like that. So what I'm hearing from you, and the question, just to circle back on that, was your most valuable part of your professional quotient. And what I'm hearing is you started with LinkedIn, and then you're also sharing your skill set with using tools and technology.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah. Would you have anything
And
else
I
to add
think,
to your most valuable
well,
PQ?
I think my most valuable skills are problem solving, which it doesn't matter if you're in mortgage servicing or affirmative action or general HR, being able to, effectively communicate and really deal with the problems and solve them.
I like that. I like that a lot. And speaking of problems,
Mhm.
have you had to overcome challenges to within your professional development?
I definitely have. I've always valued education. So my education has been on a very slow but unrelenting trajectory towards a PhD. But one issue I did have is that I'm also neurodivergent. So, neurodivergent folks tend to be very ethical. They see a problem, they want to fix it, but balancing the business need, what is a 5 alarm fire versus a, kitchen fire that you're just going to keep in your back pocket. And if someone's bored, maybe we'll have time to get to it.
Mhm.
Um, Finding that balance and being centered, getting myself centered when I think something may be 4 alarms, but the company does not think so.
Been there,
So
done that.
that is definitely a struggle. That is
Yeah.
definitely a struggle, but I have definitely been working on getting that more aligned with the companies that I work with.
So, in practicality, I heard you say you get yourself centered and then aligned with basically everyone else at the company. How? How are you centering yourself, and how are you like, yeah, just in case there's others
Well,
from our community that's like, yeah, I don't know how to do that, Andrea. Like, thank you.
I think I learned this lesson from my son in this very roundabout way.
Hmm.
When he was very young, and he is also neurodivergent, he asked, "Why are we getting clothes? Why do we have to leave the house to get clothes?" And it was like back to school shopping, kids don't want to do it. And I was like, you know what? Let me just try to answer every question he gives me. And it was a long haul. Well, why can't we make our clothes? Well, because we don't have the fabrics. Why can't we make the fabrics? Because we don't have the cottons. Well, why don't we have the cottons? We can grow the cottons. And I'm like, we don't have them. We'd still have to go out for groceries. Well, why can't we grow our groceries? It's like, because we can't make Twinkies or whatever. Just kept going and going. I use that to center myself. And this is how you just think beyond the problem. This is, let's say I think, we need to do a certain analysis, but the company says, well, we're not ready to do anything about it. So we're not gonna, we don't want to know for right now.
Hmm.
And I think it's an emergency. And well, I go to the next step, what happens, what happens if something becomes of this? Is it the end of the world? No.
Mm.
And then just keep going. Okay, what if a fire takes the whole company? Well, that's not going to happen. What if
Mhm. Yeah.
what if
Hmm. Cross that
you
one off
keep
as
going, you
likely.
keep going until you just realize, what, I just work here and I'm doing my best and they're doing their best for the company. And
Hmm. Awesome. How about, are there activities that you do well, you've already mentioned that you are kind of a nonstop student. So we could say that,
Mhm.
but activities that raise your PQ, are there other things besides continually learning that you're doing to develop yourself?
I just keep going back to the problem solving. It's at the core of everything I love doing. So I love crafts,
Oh, neat.
and I don't love art. I love crafts, which I always thought was everyone thought was a strange distinction. But when you get down to the root of it, when you see something on Instagram and you think, I want to spin a paint bucket around a canvas and make it look like that. You're trying to figure out how to recreate something. You have a problem and you're trying to figure out how you get to the end state. It's not because I desperately want a canvas that has
Yeah,
paint splatters. It's trying to figure out how to do it. And then usually once I do it a few times, I lose interest and move on to another one, which that would be why I 3D print and crochet and diamond art and pottery and everything else, and sew and everything else you can think of.
but you follow passions and pursuits. So
Definitely.
what is grabbing your attention, you want to learn enough about it to do it, and then basically keep learning something out. And I actually identify with that a lot. I've always kind of said I enjoy being a jack or Jill of all trades rather than necessarily a master of one specific thing, because I have too many interests to spend time on just one thing. Like, I want to learn a lot. So I
Yeah.
totally resonate with that. I'm not so much of a crafter, only because these two fat thumbs don't really work really well when I'm putting things together, but I've tried. I've tried. How about, I think we've asked about advice to others, but I'm going to circle back on that specifically because we've both shared that we're neurodivergent. And because of that angle in this conversation, I'd like to ask what advice you would give to other people that are in our same community that are coming into that professional world for the first time. And are there tips that you could share that have helped you navigate the professional landscape from that angle?
Well, there's definitely the resume verb thing
Hmm.
has definitely, my brother is also neurodivergent. It has helped him immensely. Um, but also get to the core of what drives you, of what makes you passionate, and gain the skills to get the job around it. I mean, I'm a late diagnosed female with autism, so I didn't, I just went along for the longest time. And, I've been doing my profession for about 20 years now. So I
Hmm.
was just diagnosed 4 years ago.
Hmm.
So getting to that core of what I love, I didn't even realize until 5 years ago that I like crafts, not necessarily art. And why? Because it's problem solving. It's less, it's artistic interpretation, but I would never sit down to try and draw something.
Sure, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But if someone's made something out of glass and brick and, uh, I just bought stuff to make squishies, and also giving back. I find this with a lot of neurodivergent folks, they feel more empowered advocating for others than they do advocating for themselves. So I would never have advocated for myself like I have almost thrown down for my child,
Mm-hmm.
or for, I volunteer for CASA, and that's, helping foster children, how I volunteer for them or for animals. I think doing that for others gives you the strength, I think, to do it for yourself as well, whether it's at work or,
Mm-hmm.
whatever other situation you have.
I like that. I like that. Are there, is there anything that you would like to spotlight or share with this audience that's listening right now? Here's like just a freebie, whatever you'd like to spotlight or highlight.
Can't think of anything right now.
Well, you just mentioned one, which is
It's a
why
big
I asked.
question.
So you volunteer with CASA, you said?
Yes. So they are basically a volunteer organization where, when kids go into foster care, there's a lot of different agencies and people and, places that have to give them services that they're owed. The state of Texas has been sued a lot on not providing a level of care, and CASAs just check in, have face-to-face time with them, talk
Oh,
with their attorneys and the placement services, and kind of make sure that they get all the services, and that if there's issues, that we bring them up to the judge. So we're court appointed. That's what CASA stands for, court
okay.
appointed special advocate. And they
Oh,
have them in every state.
very
And
cool.
it's, you just take some training courses, and I found it very, very enriching because it's helping others and advocating
Mhm.
for them.
Awesome. I can see that that's something that you're passionate about is advocacy for others, and I appreciate that. I'm here for it. So thank you for that. And before we log off for this conversation, is there anything else that you'd like to share on this topic that maybe we haven't already?
Um, just, another passion of mine is trying to get neurodiversity in the spotlight as, I don't want to say more mainstream, but changing the perspective. I
Absolutely.
hope that by me telling my coworkers and telling my bosses and telling everybody else that I'm an autistic female, and, I don't count toothpicks on the ground, or, whatever the other cliches are,
Mm-hmm.
that I've been good at my job for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
This
Mm-hmm.
hasn't changed anything but made me better knowing. Um, there's an Instagram post where it just says, when you've been diagnosed with ADHD, but it's something still doesn't feel right, you might have the tism. Because they weren't even allowed to diagnose both ADHD and autism until after 2013, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's still relatively new, and the awareness is just becoming more and more, which is why there's so many
Hmm.
adults, however, yeah, so many people coming in and finding out later in life. And so I too am very passionate about being vocal about it, because if we aren't, then we're not helping clear the way for those coming up after us and with us, beside us. And so, and especially those of us that have employment and are in those like very privileged seats to be able to say
Hmm.
me too, so that we can start changing people's perceptions. Because unfortunately, once we hear certain words about people, we just kind of start making all kinds of assumptions attached to. And it's helpful to say, if you've met somebody who's neurodivergent, you've met one person who's neurodivergent, and it's not a cookie cutter. It's not,
Yeah.
yeah. Hmm. So I
And that's,
appreciate
kind
that.
of, I don't think people have malice when they do that. I
Sure,
always give the
not always.
example of
Sometimes they
implicit.
do, but
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
definitely. But I
But
always give the example of, if you're at the grocery store and you have three registers in front of you, one person has coupons, one person, they all have the same amount of items, but one person has coupons, another person just looks like they have a debit card, and another person has a lot of cat food. Your brain is just going to tell you which one to go to, whether you have anything against coupons, cats, or anything else.
sure,
Um, so it's not necessarily out of malice against people that buy cat food or people that use
sure,
coupons.
or with
You're just
coupons,
trying to get
sure.
to the end of your day quicker.
Right.
So
Mhm.
I just think that neurodiversity, it's a hot word that's out there, but the more that the perception is shifted, the more that they can enter the workforce and be valued,
Yeah.
because it's very easy for something that's perceived to be stupid by others
Mhm.
to really just derail someone, whether it's a
Yeah.
flickering light in a conference room or, anything like that. And it's a hugely college educated population because the education system has everything set up to help them.
Mhm.
And then it falls off a cliff after that.
Yeah.
There's no bridge to employment after that.
Mm. Mm. Well, I appreciate your thoughts on this. It's one of those ones where I hope that we'll continue to see a shift in our lifetimes where we're continually even pushing the goalposts back, like achieving
Mhm.
more tools and more awareness, and then just wanting to keep growing that field and that interest. So thank you for being open and authentic and honest about this in this conversation. And to our listeners, if you've enjoyed this conversation, I would just love to ask for you to like, share, subscribe, and leave a positive review. Check out our sponsor, Market Scale, who gives us the ability to host this podcast. And remember that unlike our IQ or our EQ, we can easily raise our PQ every single day. Just keep learning, building, and connecting. Thank you so much, Andrea. Thank you.